The Lives We Live. The true life stories of three New York area women. Joyce Spector's an experienced New Yorker. She and her husband share a special partnership in their love and in their business. Joyce balances city life with the simplicity she finds at her country cabin. The most important hours in Linda Terry's life are spent with her son. She's also a graduate student at Columbia and an executive in adoption services. But first, she's Victor's mom. Nancy Tighe lives in Westchester with her 4 sons. Facing single parenthood after divorce, she's raising her family while struggling for her own independence. Nancy, Joyce, and Linda share true and intimate experiences with each other. Real conversations touching the lives we live.
Touch your hand off.
We're doing this, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was talking to Joyce.
You're on. You know that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if a woman has enough, she has that right. I really think, I wasn't pushed to that in my own divorce situation, but I know women who are, and they've had enough of it. They walk out on husbands, kids, house, everything.
Oh, no. Absolutely not. Do not walk out on your kids. No mother is allowed to walk out on her kids. That's sacred. Absolutely.
What do you mean they're not allowed to walk
Not
out?
allowed. You have those kids. They're your responsibility till they leave home. They have the option to leave, but you don't leave your kids.
Yeah, but Nancy, maybe you've never felt what these women have felt.
Hey, I have felt it. I wanted a hand in my bed a lot of times. It's like, hey, guys, I haven't had enough. I want it. So I go up to my bedroom and I lock the door for a little while and I read or I do something. I come down and I want the mood's passed.
You had a marriage, you wanted out.
Yeah, but that was different. That was not leaving my kids to threats.
What's the difference, Nancy?
No,
You're
big
making
difference.
a choice for your survival. What's the difference between leaving your kids or leaving the whole package?
No, there is a difference.
No, there's a big difference between leaving the kids and leaving a marriage. The kids are yours, and they should always know that the mother will always be there for them. Ever. That's unconditional.
I
There's
think
no
it's
doubt.
important that the kids should have parents and be cared for, and they shouldn't be left on a street corner, but there's no reason why the woman can't walk.
No, she can't walk.
No, well, Nancy, wait a minute. A couple of things. One, I walked out. I walked out of a marriage, but I never thought of leaving Victor Jr. I mean, I initiated the divorce, but things weren't that uncomfortable, or the seat wasn't that hot. But I must tell you, even though I didn't do it, I know people who have. And I'll say this, you don't know what you'll be pushed to. I mean, oftentimes, you're in a situation that is so uncomfortable for you that for your own survival, you have to leave. You have your children, and you have Jack's support. It's not so just easy. I mean, some women with a lot of kids, they have to leave them. They can't take care of them.
You're in a house,
But
your
that-
kids have rooms, clothes, there's transportation, your husband's nearby. You got a good system there.
Yeah, but
What about the woman that's in a tiny apartment with a lot of screaming kids? There is no money in the house. Maybe the husband's out of work, and maybe she's ready to jump off a building. And she wants to live. She wants to survive.
So you leave permanently? Maybe you can take a vacation for 2 weeks and go back to mother, and maybe you can trade places. You can take a break, but you don't leave
She's
on a permanent
wounded.
basis.
She's injured. She needs to survive. How
So
can
those
you put a
kids-
time limit on
What do you do
what's
to
going to
those
make her
kids?
healthy
Wait a
again?
minute. What do you do to those kids? Those kids will be wounded for life. You leave a kid alone and you abandon that kid, and for the rest of their life he's scarred.
Let me
Isn't
tell
it
you
something?
Absolutely scarred. No, it's a knowledge. I know it.
No,
I'm sure.
no.
In my
mean,
heart,
now,
I
there
know
are
that.
fathers out there. Men take care of their children. There are men in marriages, and the wife drops dead tomorrow, and they raise those children.
That's very different.
And they do a
Yeah.
good job. No, but the woman is still gone.
Yeah, she's
You're
gone, but
making-
the
the
mother's
mother's gone.
opted to leave, and she hasn't made that choice. No.
Nancy, you're making a terrible assumption that the woman is more capable of taking care of those kids.
I am not saying
I mean,
about who's
men leave
better.
all the time.
I am not saying.
You stayed and you've got the kids. What's the difference if Jack had the kids and you split?
I think it's rotten if a father leaves his kids' lives and never enters their lives again. And for a mother to leave and never to see her kids again, this is
We're
what
not
we're talking
about
about.
not
aren't we?
entering lives again. We're talking about just removing yourself from the physical setup of that family life.
And where are the kids then? They never see you. You don't see them from day to day. You don't even contact them. You just leave them.
No,
and abandon those
we're
kids.
not talking about abandonment.
What are
We're
we
talking
talking
about
about then?
leaving.
But wait a minute.
Leaving
I think
what?
for some children, that's necessary too. I mean, I know a situation, a friend of mine, and she has left her husband and children in Seattle, Washington, and it's a situation that it would be more painful for the children to try to see her. She cannot fly back and forth, and because she loves them, the husband has the money, he is rearing those children. I think you have to look at every individual case personally. I personally, again, didn't do it, but I'm not saying that a woman can't do it or that she is damaging the children. That's the same philosophy that a woman can't work. That supposedly all these terrible things are going to happen to the kids if you go to work. And you know what? There are a lot of children, including my own. I'm going to work and Victor's fine. I don't think you can make a blanket statement like that and say that it's not her right or she can't do it. Some women have to do it.
A woman has the absolute moral obligation to stay with those kids through thick or thin. I really do. And I almost feel the same way.
You do.
I
Not
do.
every woman
I
in
do.
this
That's
world.
true. I
You know,
feel
it's
that
the
way.
same way the Irish Catholics feel about abortion. I understand how they feel about it for themselves, and they are allowed. It's wonderful. They can make those own judgments for their own lives. But don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what's right or wrong. And it's the same analogy, Nancy. It's all right for you. You feel that being with the children is
vital.
It's vital, is essential to their life, your position on this earth, your reason for living. Some people don't feel that way.
Then why have the kids to begin with?
Oh, then that's
Well,
20/20
No,
hindsight.
I'm sorry.
No,
and you have
Nancy,
them. No,
I
we
grew
have
up
them
in a
very
family
strongly
where
about
there was a lot of friction, and I personally would have preferred that friction ended a heck of a lot earlier than it did, because the kids would have been much happier. I would have preferred one of my parents split.
Yeah, but that's your father probably would have been the one to split. Is that right? And you would have gotten with your mother. Isn't that the most likely thing? Or would
Well,
you?
I'm not so sure about that. I'm telling the truth, I'm not.
You never know. I say you never know, but for a woman, when you get to that point, because I got to the point, I mean, I lived for my parents, I lived for the church, I lived for everything. And then came the day that I had to abandon all of that and walk out on a marriage. I took Victor with
Yes,
me.
you took
Yes,
Victor with you.
yes,
That's right.
but that's one child, Nancy. I mean, I was 24 years old. I had the whole world in front of me. I had an education. I mean, I had a very supportive family. Supposing you took all those things away, I'm not so sure that I would have taken Victor Jr. with me. I don't know.
I think that you can't leave a child behind when the mother and father split. And the mother has got to be the reassuring factor in the child's life to always know that that mother is going to be there.
Why the mother? I have a father, too.
What can the mother supply that the father can't? Tell me.
I just feel so strongly that it's almost irrational.
It is
It is
irrational.
irrational on my part. But I will even grant you that. But I feel so strongly that I don't back away from it. I'm not trying to back away from it. But it's like there's a bond between a mother and a child. And if the mother even gives a threat or in rage saying that I'm going to send your kids to an orphanage, that's terrible. That is so destructive to a child. And then to actually then leave your bodily, take your body out of that marriage and take your body and leave the kids there. That's the same reverse of abandonment as far as I'm concerned.
I don't feel that way.
Well,
I'm
I'm convinced in my heart that I'm not.
It depends on the situation. It depends on what that woman has to help her. I mean, if you say, I'm going to walk out of a marriage, that is traumatic enough. You might not be able to walk out, support the children. You might not be able to do what is right by those children. They might be better off with the father. But I think a lot of mothers have the ego. They can't let go. I mean, it's me. It's only me. If I don't do it, the poor kids, they're going to fall by the wayside. That is fantasy. That is fantasy. Children are being reared by their fathers and are turning out to be productive and good kids. I mean, but that's all.
In a moment, we'll meet a woman who left her husband and 5 children when married life drove her to the breaking point.
Hey, I am not denying you the fact that the feeling is there. That's a reality. That's a truth.
Nancy Joyce, this is my friend Betty Barrett. Betty walked out. She had had enough. And I told you about it.
How could you walk out? I mean, how? A mother of... I'm 4. How many children do you have?
5. 4 boys and 1 girl.
How?
And how could I have walked out? It was not easy. It wasn't a decision also that happened overnight. I was married for 23 years before I did it. And the last 10 years of my marriage was not exactly all bliss. And I thought about it for like 2 years before I actually did it. So it wasn't an impromptu decision or anything.
But why?
Well, I think it's like everything else in life. It isn't only just one thing. In my case, and every case is very personal, my husband had a problem, which involved money, which got us in debt. And unfortunately, I was the one that had to pay off the debts because they started to garnish my salary. And so I had the creditors calling me at the office. And so that was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
So you left the kids
left the kids for that reason. Since I had $25,000 worth of debts that I had to pay, I knew that I couldn't take my children with me because I couldn't support the children and also pay off all these obligations. And by law, I did have to pay them because we had co-signed notes and things like that without, at that point, my realizing. So I knew I couldn't support the children and pay these obligations. Plus the fact, which I think is a very important consideration, is I had been a career woman since 1968. I love my field. It's very important to me. My ex-husband always worked out of our apartment, so he was always there when the children came home. He's an incredible father. I mean, a wonderful father, adores his children. So bad enough my walking out, I couldn't hurt him by taking the children as well. It would have devastated him.
But what about the kids?
The children also understand because they love their daddy. And to this very day, they love him.
Yeah.
I mean, he is an incredible human being.
I'm assuming they stayed in their home.
Exactly.
The home they grew up
And when
in.
I walked out, I took nothing. I just took my clothes. I left everything. Nothing. I took nothing.
Yeah, but you said that he couldn't support you and the kids. So how are the kids going to be supporting themselves
Well,
there in the house?
as a matter of fact, when I walked out, he started to pull himself together, and now he's doing fairly well. And the thing is that I had, been practically the sole support for many, many years. And he knew that he had the security of my going out to business and bringing a certain amount of money coming home. And he would do his own thing and pay off schooling in between, but we never had security. So,
See, what I'm reading is that you really took your kids into consideration first.
well, to begin
that's
with,
what Nancy
one of the
is so
things that you
frightened
have
by.
to remember is, it sounds simplistic, but I really didn't abandon them. I just moved 30 blocks away. I'm 30 blocks away. I moved from 83rd Street to 57th Street. I designed my apartment so they can stay with me also whenever. They need me, they call me, I'm there.
But the guilt of leaving your kids with the father. I mean, it's okay that they visit him and they live with him, but I don't hear you saying that they spent any time with you or very little time with you. The sole responsibility was with the father. The guilt that you must have, I'm projecting my guilt onto you.
That's it.
Yes.
I would.
Whatever.
Well, you're also-
Well, no, I do feel guilt, and I'll be honest, I really could have been on this show 2 years ago. I mean, divorce is painful and bad enough as it is. But besides the divorce, to walk out, you have to be the one to walk out and walk out on your children. I could not have done this before.
But look,
I mean, it's
look
just-
what people say. I mean, the neighbors, the church. I mean, I know Betty. I know she comes out of a heavy Catholic background.
And South America to boot, because I was born and raised in Chile in South America, so my family down there had to explain. Bad enough I had divorced, but also, left
Leaving
my
children.
children.
Well, I'm curious what kind of a relationship you have with your children today and how it progressed after that day you walked out with your valises.
But how old are the kids? I think
Okay.
that's important. That's very, very important to me.
This
How old were the
happened
kids
2
when
years ago. I have 4 boys, 1 girl. They're 23, 22, 19. My girl is 17, and I have a boy of 14.
Oh, so they were all in their late teens, basically. When
12?
You well, one was.
Three were basically out of the house, and 2 were left in the house, my daughter and my son. And so it was really basically a question of 2 full-time at home. And don't forget, I put in 23 years of being a mother and a career woman at the same time. I mean, I was the one that took them to PTA meetings. I was a Girl Scout leader. I was a chauffeur to them. All this in a career as well. So I've put in many, many years raising 5 children. So walking out on them is not like, abandoning my responsibilities. I've done my responsibilities.
No, you are still abandoning your responsibilities. You had 2 more that were home. Your
But the
responsibility is
foundation is
not.
laid,
They're in
Nancy.
their own home. They're
No.
sleeping in their own beds.
No.
They still have one half of the parental relationship full
And a much
time
better,
and the other
a
part
better
time and
situation because
healthier.
there was chaos when I was there. There was the last 2 years. There was so much bitterness and so much unhappiness in my part. My husband was miserable. The children were definitely getting affected, and they themselves say now that they feel so much better about it. They respect what I did. Also, they can understand it. I promise you. They say to me, especially the older ones, I really admire you for what you did.
Okay, the older ones, they're out of the house. But what about the 10-year-old and the 14-year-old?
Even the 10 and the 17-year-old, the 14-year-old and the 17-year-old, I have an incredible relationship with them.
Well, how much do you see of them?
I see them every weekend. They sort of come to me. I talk to them. I go to their school meeting. My daughter's in New Jersey, and with my ex-husband, we were just down there to see her 3 weekends ago. We went down together, spent the weekend together to see her.
Yeah, Nancy, what I can't comprehend is how
It
you
isn't the time.
could-
Also, it's what you
Quality
do with it.
versus
You know,
quantity.
I think if you're just constantly there, and you're making soup and sandwiches, it doesn't mean that you are a full-time mother.
Mhm.
You could be an awful mother doing that.
You would have preferred Betty to stay in that household?
No,
I had to do it
didn't
for my
say-
survival.
I'm not
I
saying
really
that Betty
did.
should have stayed there, but the kids should have come with you. You can very
I
easily.
couldn't afford them.
She didn't have the money.
Nancy,
How
how
did
did
I
it walk
I
out
could
with
not
5
afford
children?
to keep them and to support them, to send them to school, to clothe them. Also paid $25,000. I mean, you're seeing right now a woman, like I say, who just finished paying off debts for 2.5 years, and I'm just starting my own business now, myself in interior design, and I mean, I have nothing. I don't have a house. I have nothing to show for except 5 wonderful children and 23 years of marriage, which were wonderful, and now
Wait, they're not weren't wonderful.
that we're wonderful.
Well,
In
why
many
did you
ways.
leave then if they were wonderful? Only because of the financial difficulty.
Well,
That's not only.
that's-
I'm belittling
Well,
that.
as a matter of fact, I'll be very honest with you. When it happened 2 years ago, that was the primary thing. But now, if I had to do it all over again, I would still do it, but maybe even for other reasons. Besides the financial reason, now that I know what I know. Because at that time, I really didn't know what I know now.
You have to leave it sometimes. But that's what I was saying, Nancy. It's an individual situation. I told you that before. You're comparing it to your own, but you have to stop and dissect what you have. You have Jack giving you money. You have that kind of support. Money makes a difference. And 5 children? I can talk about what I did. I only had 1, and I have the support from my ex-husband for that 1. But you take all that away. Who can effectively go with 5 children someplace?
Well,
and
it
start
depends
from
on
the
what kind of a
beginning?
life you want to live. I mean, if you
I could have gone on welfare. Absolutely.
and you could have had your kids.
Yes, but I wasn't about to do, a thing like that either. I mean,
I have a friend who went on welfare to stay with her kids, and I have to say that I think sometimes.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
I'm sorry, but there is.
Because the pride of a person,
Yes.
and for my child to know that I love you so
But
much.
it's only a temporary thing. It's not you're out of debt now. You could have done the same thing with those kids. You must have had to contribute some money to those kids' benefit, as if your husband had no money to begin with. You must have been giving money to them to
we
support
always,
them.
we always, contribute, and he did through the years also. But I'm saying is he had this big problem where he couldn't be relied.
We'll continue our conversation after these messages.
Nancy, it's better that she would have gone on welfare, taken care of because Betty was more concerned about her survival in this world.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, we've listened to Betty, and I see it, I understand it. I didn't do it. But when you get to the point where you've had enough, and someone said that to me, we all play around with the thought, should I leave, should I stay, whatever. And a person once told me, when you've had enough, you'll leave it all. Okay, Betty did that. You can't understand that.
Well, because I can't. I mean, I just can't think of leaving those kids. If they were older, and if they were in their teens, and they were into college, maybe that's not the same as leaving my kids who were.
Well, see,
at
I've
the
heard
time of
just
the
the
divorce,
opposite.
were
It's much
under
easier to
11.
leave them when they're younger
Oh,
than when in
no.
their teens.
Oh, no.
And it's so many different ideas because teens are bad enough and difficult enough age.
You can
as
talk
it
to
is.
teens. You can tell teens what's happening. You can understand. You can lay it all out and say, look, these are the financial reasons why we're doing it.
It's never a good time, really.
No,
It's
that's
never
the
a
point.
good time. So if you're going to wait for a good time, it'll never be a good time at any age.
Would you do this again? I mean, if you had to, we've talked about it. If you had to go back in time, would you do this again?
No doubt about it.
You
I
would.
had no other choice but to do what I did at the time, and I stick by my choice.
I think your kids' lives became better for what you did. I think it's,
In my opinion, they
people
did.
aren't sympathetic to your situation. I am, maybe because I see a thread inside of me where I too could leave a situation like that. Also thinking of the kids first, you're assuming that the kids were lost somewhere in the shuffle. My interpretation is that what
They
you
were well
did
taken
made
care
your
of.
kids' lives
Much better. Oh,
Uh-huh.
much better. It was a problem before. The last 2 years were very bad for everybody concerned.
And now she has a life. I mean, she has
I can be a better mother to them.
to
even.
them. I can
Absolutely.
understand that.
Mhm.
And it's something that they can be proud of. They now have a successful mother. She didn't just wallow in self-pity. She did what she had to do.
No, they call me and they're very supportive of my new business. Did you get a new client today? How are you doing?
Yeah.
Are
And
you
they're
going
just
to take
as
those kids
excited.
back to you at all at any time? Is that something that you said to yourself? Is that how you rationalize doing this? Well, in 2 years, when I have my feet on the ground, you can come back to me.
No, I didn't
It's
think.
permanent.
It's as far as my husband has custody of the children. I relinquished custody of the children. I relinquished it. Absolutely. Yes, I
Nancy,
did.
it's not that startling, darling. Sometimes, because you're not saying, what about the individual?
Project being able
You
to
talk
do
about
that.
the children all the time. Children are wonderful. I have one. I think they're marvelous.
I do
But
too.
what
I'd
about
have
yourself?
5 again if I had the choice. I would have 5 again. I love them.
You never talk about Betty as an individual. You talk about these children, 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 children. When do you live for yourself, or if it comes
Oh,
to
I
that?
do that, but it was in a context of not so total selfishness. That's how I feel.
But you don't
I
consider
mean, I'm afraid
yourself
to
a
even say that to
person?
you, but I really think it's a
No.
very selfish way that you
Yes.
have dealt with this problem. And say, no, I want a good life, and I'm going to have the best financial things.
Nancy,
That's what
Nancy,
No, I had a
that's not
terrible
the
life. I don't
life.
have, you know.
She has a better life. The father has a better relationship with the kids. She's a better example for her children. What's wrong?
It's against everything you've been taught.
It is against every grain in my body. It's just, it goes against everything.
It's everything you've been taught. Which is what the problem is with divorce and everything else. But as I said, what about the individual? You
I think there
can't.
are individual cases. I don't think you can be pat about really, you know, anything.
I mean, one part of me admires your ability to be so staunch and to stand up to your kids and to your husband and to society and your church and your background, your everything, and say, I want it for me. But it sounds like it's me. That's
No,
all I hear.
After
me.
23
I
years?
don't care. Me is there's a time in this world when you have to say, it's not just for me, it's for my kids, and I'll sacrifice and I'll make things better for them. And I won't have to.
her whole life.
Have you read
forever.
Faye Weldon? Have you read Faye Weldon?
No.
I think you should.
What is that?
I think you should read Faye Weldon.
I don't
It will
even know what
explain
it
a lot of things. She's a wonderful author and very good about women's feelings. And I think if you were the kind of show that Ruby did